Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I have a great episode for you today. We're talking fix and flips with my friend Burke Atkerson. He has written a book. He has a fix and flip community. He's done 100 plus fix and flips as a general contractor, as the investor himself. So he has a ton of experience. We learned a lot throughout the episode, so I hope you enjoy. And make sure to come out to our real estate investor meetup that we have on the second Thursday every single month. Hope you enjoy. Do you play any poker at all when you smoke cigars?
Not really. I like
No.
poker. I probably play once a year.
Okay.
So what I find is cigars are really good for doing some deep work like writing
Okay.
or, and more importantly is conversation. Like
Yeah.
one-on-one, it's like 2 hours of just rich conversation,
Yeah. Me and some of my friends will play poker and smoke a few cigars, and it's always a fun time, and it is good conversation. We end up just talking most of the time and not even really playing poker, but
right?
we enjoy it.
It's like an excuse to relate.
Definitely. So how did you get started into kind of real estate, and did you go right into fix and flips, or was there something first before you did that?
So a little bit of my backstory. Good question. My wife and I were missionaries overseas in South America. When we moved to the States, it was about 8 years ago to save our marriage because things were falling apart and we were burned out. And we'd been back, like, we were living in this little 600 square foot home. We had 2 kids and we had a third on the way. Now we have 6 kids. And we were hanging on by a string, but my wife kept saying she wanted a house. And I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to buy a house. That's crazy. But we did have consistent income and good credit, and apparently that's all you need to buy a house. So we were qualified to buy up to, I think, $250,000, which today wouldn't get us anything. But
No.
8 years ago, it was the sweet spot for entry-level houses that had been flipped.
Okay.
So, a 56-year-old home, and or we could find a house that needed to be flipped. And that intrigued me, but I'm not a handyman. I'm not very, I can't hardly hammer a nail into the wall. And I definitely can't paint for some reason. So managing contractors and all of that at our price point would have probably wrecked our marriage. Like we needed to do everything I needed to buy her house, and she wanted one that was like move-in ready and beautiful. And so we ended up looking at 20 houses, and 3 or 4 of them were houses that had just been like remodeled by flippers, and we moved into one that had been flipped, and we bought it, and all that came out of our pocket was like $4,000 because of a CHAFA loan.
Yeah.
And so we were like, it was amazing. And you know how that goes. I didn't even know that was possible. We bought a house with $4,000
Yep.
out of pocket.
Pretty sweet deal to get started.
It was amazing. And then we didn't even have to pay our first payment for like 7 weeks later.
Yeah.
It
is a pretty good loan program, and it's specific to Colorado too, which I really like. And I've done it a few times with some clients looking to get their first purchase.
It's such a good resource. CHAFA, CHFA, right?
Yep. CHFA.
So
in real estate, first impressions can make or break a deal. Whether you're listing a home for sale or marketing an investment property, having high quality photos are key at grabbing attention. If you want to stand out in the competitive Colorado Springs market, having high quality photos is essential. And Wayne over at Homadi excels at getting the best possible photos for your property. He is based right here in Colorado Springs and specializes in capturing properties in the best light. If you're ready to take your property photos to the next level, make sure to contact Wayne over at Homadi and mention you heard about him from Tanner at Red and Joy Real Estate to get 20% off your next shoot. Remember, great photos can make the difference between a quick sale and a stale listing. So make sure to contact Wayne over at Homadi today.
What happened is we moved into that house, and that flipper didn't just put lipstick on a pig. he fixed all of the big issues.
Nice.
So we had brand new air conditioner, brand new furnace, brand new roof, new plumbing throughout the house. I mean, the basement hadn't been remodeled yet. So that gave us a little bit of room, and we did remodel that over the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't, no, it was the second year that we did that because we had a little basement flood issue. We had new windows in the house, new doors throughout, new paint. And then they had the original wood floors that were like nicely refinished.
Yeah.
So we had like these beautiful wooden floors that are,
Uh-huh.
you can't mimic that old style from the 1950s.
Where was this at? Was this in Colorado?
Mm-hmm.
Springs specifically?
Colorado Springs is 80909 area.
Okay.
So, South Academy, where were we? We were by Palmer Park in that area.
Oh yeah, not a bad spot. Yeah.
It was great. It was one of those areas that, crime rates go up on that side of Maysland, and we were on that side of Maysland.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like 2 houses down, they had like a car stealing operation.
Nice.
Eventually, they got busted. Thank God.
Yeah. Were you involved in that busting? Did you kind of?
I wish. That would have been fun. If only that much adventure was going on.
Yeah.
But man, what I realized is like flippers and real estate investors are solving real life problems. They're not just, we have this idea of landlords, politically and culturally as like these evil, greedy.
Yeah.
It's like the shadow side.
Yeah. Like taking advantage of everyone.
They're just these crooked, greedy people.
Yeah.
And that was my experience with like, crap, I think buying a fully remodeled home saved our marriage. Like we were able to move into a house where my wife felt safe and loved, and it was beautiful, and it had no big red flags, which is hard at the entry level. Right now in Colorado Springs, that's probably the 400,000 point, which is super doable, but we really needed that. And so it changed my life, man. So instantly I started diving in and saying like, well, how can I get into this? If I could buy a house with no money down, maybe there's ways to invest in real estate with no money down. And so I went ahead and got my real estate license, but with the hope of, just learning the ropes and getting into investing and flipping and eventually building out a rental portfolio.
Nice.
So Airbnb portfolio really was the long-term picture there. What happened is over the next 7 or 8 years, I flipped a few dozen by myself, and I never could manage to keep them. Like I just kept depending on the cash flow from the flips. So the way I teach my coaching clients now is, flipping is for building capital, not for building wealth. So it's a phenomenal tool for building capital. But then, owning real estate is good for building wealth. So really you want to get to the point where you're holding on to one every 3 or one of every 4 houses you flip.
Okay.
And then eventually maybe just moving towards, rentals or multifamily, which is even more bang for your buck. If you're wanting to live off of real estate, right?
Yeah.
And that was our long-term perspective at the time. So flipping was kind of our way in, and it's just continued to pay the bills over the years somehow, even through the hard times. So, and I've had some bad flips. I've had one where I was expecting to make 30 grand and ended up losing about 50 grand. So I call that an $80,000 loss just because of where my expectation was.
Yeah.
That's, I got kind of PTSD after that. Like, I can't do real estate anymore. It took me like 6 more months before I could dive into my next deal.
Okay.
But
how are you finding most of these deals? If you're planning to get photos done on your next listing or rental property, don't forget to reach out to Wayne with Homani to get 20% off your next shoot.
It's been paying the bills. Say that again.
How have you been finding most of these deals? Do you do a lot of off-market marketing, connecting to agents? What works best for you?
Yeah, so since I was a real estate agent, I knew people that needed to sell their house, and I would step in and say, okay, well, there's two things I could do here. If it needed work, I would say, hey, you need to prep this house for sale because this won't even pass an FHA appraisal, or a VA appraisal because of safety. There's broken glass, there's crap all over the house. You either need to prep the house and I could list it for you, and this is what you could expect to receive. Maybe you could sell it for 300 grand, or I could buy it for you. Let's say I could buy it for you from you for 200,000. We could close next week, and no appraisal involved, as is. Leave any junk you want, and then I can invest 100 grand to fix it up, and then I'll probably sell it for about 400,000. These are rough numbers, right? And those are pretty average for Colorado Springs. I think they would negotiate back and forth. Usually we'd end up around 220, 230 on the purchase price on that kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And even that's kind of skim profit margins.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 grand once the unknown happens. And that's 6 months of work and 500 hours of work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not passive. It's an active thing. I like to tell my coaching clients now too, I'm like, this isn't passive. If you want easy money, throw it in the S&P 500 and don't look back. Yeah. Just don't even think about it day to day. But if you want something that I think for each flip you're doing, you're probably spending 10 hours a week on it. So you could do that on the side of your, 9 to 5.
Yeah. And you don't do any of the contracting work yourself. Do you manage subcontractors? Do you just have a GC that's your guy, he's your go-to, and he does everything? Or how do you kind of run that operation for the contract part?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for the first several that I flipped, I trusted contractors. And I hired some friends who were contractors, and over time it ended up being kind of painful. So I don't want to sound like a bummer, but what I tell my coaching clients is I'm kind of like the Dave Ramsey of real estate. Like, I'm going to be realistic.
Yeah,
not overly conservative, but I'm going to tell you the realistic side of investing. Because what gurus like to tell you online is that it's easy money, it's completely passive, and you're going to be making 100 grand a month. In 6 months, I'll make you a millionaire. Like, okay, cool. But what I like to do with my coaching clients is walk them through the realities of what it's going to take. I don't think there's such thing as an easy button. You have to put in the work, you have to put in the time, you have to learn, you have to make mistakes. And so some of the mistakes I was making was the kind of contractors I was hiring. On one or two of them, I hired more retail contractors. Let me explain briefly. I think there's two kinds of contractors, and this is just my framework for talking about it. There's retail contractors who work with somebody who just needs their house remodeled because they're living in it, so they need a nicer kitchen. And the wife is like, yeah, I don't care, we'll put 100 grand into the kitchen. So that's like a bad example, but that's like a retail investor, right? Or contractor. And then on the other side, you have a wholesale contractor who's willing to work with investors. Investors need tighter margins on their deals. So something that they could charge maybe the same kitchen remodel that would cost 100 grand in another house. With an investor, it can't cost more than 15 or 20 grand. Actually, I've never spent more than 14 grand on a kitchen, on a whole kitchen remodel. And so over time, I learned how to negotiate this, but at the time, I would just walk through the property with a contractor before I got to closing. I'm like, well, how much do you think this is all going to cost? And they'd be like, oh, 50 grand. I'm like, okay, I do my numbers. I'm like, okay, it still kind of makes sense. So let's do it. And then of course it would end up being like 70 grand. And then I either didn't have enough margin or meat on the deal or barely did. So my first few I probably realistically profited 5 to 10K each property, which is a lot of work for only 5 to 10. I should have been driving Uber to make that kind of money.
But you learned a ton during that process, which is probably the most important thing in order to move forward with your career in flipping.
Super valuable. So the other thing I realized, because contractors having to work with a tighter margin to work with me as an investor, I found that after doing 2 flips together,
Mm-hmm.
they would start trying to increase their prices.
Oh.
You know, they think like they've got me locked down for life now, and like they
Yeah.
could just, and I'm like, man, you did less work on this other one for that same, bathroom, and now you want
Mm-hmm.
more money. Or you did more work on this other bathroom, and now this one requires less work, but you want more money. And I'm like, we end up fighting, and they're like, well, it wasn't enough money. I'm like, okay. So I ended up like burning bridges after, 1 or 2 flips together.
Mm.
And, some of the, like one of the contractors I had to fire, which was a friend of mine. And that was really painful. And it was an important lesson for me to learn. I waited too long to fire him. And at that point, the market had flipped. So tons of lessons. But what I ended up doing after that, after I really got burned having to fire a friend, is I was like, you know what? I'm going to start being the middleman here. I'm going to be the project manager on all of these flips, and I'm going to sub it all out. And that's even more work. It's a lot more.
It sounds like a lot more work. I mean, because you're basically juggling all these subs saying, hey, do this, do this, do this. And then they come back to you and like, oh, but this guy's doing this right now. Why am I here right at the same time? And then it just causes problems with all that.
So it actually worked out really well for me. So what I ended up doing is I had some other friends who were doing flips, and I'm like, well, hey, and they were, talking about they needed a contractor. And I was like, I don't know any contractors to recommend, but I could do it for you. I'll manage the whole project. And so I ended up building a little company called FlipLift, where I was a project manager for investors. And I would just charge 10%. So I don't do it anymore. But it just ended up last summer, my wife was pregnant with her 6th, and I was doing like 70 and 80-hour work weeks, managing multiple projects in Denver for other investors. And it was too much time, too much wear and tear for me. But I would just charge them 10% of whatever their rehab budget was. So if they had $1,000 rehab, I would just charge them $5,000 to manage it all. And it was actually a really clean, easy model. But then when stuff went wrong, I'm like too tenderhearted. And I just told them like, well, like, this ended up costing you more money. And, we'd have all the change orders in place, unexpected stuff inevitably comes up. But every time I'm like, yeah, just take half my commission, just to kind of save that relationship and take care of my people. But it ended up being a really poor use of my time then. So, but we ended up doing a total, I've done a little over 100 flips now because of that. And it ended up just wearing me down last summer. So I've stepped away from that model, and now I'm moved more towards coaching real estate investors, and separately coaching men through breakthrough coaching, transformation coaching. So it's personal development stuff. And yeah, I've got a lot of skills in real estate and real estate investing, but my passion is in helping people just be better people. And it's just beautiful. So that's actually taken up a lot of my time now, is just coaching men.
Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. For your real estate program that you kind of help people out with, what's like the first kind of step you kind of sit them down and like, okay, this is the first thing you need to know about doing your first flip, so you have proper expectations to actually make sure you can do it?
Well, first thing is I want to be realistic and say, can you handle this risk? The first deal I went into, I had no money into it personally, but I pulled out $50,000 in credit cards, and it worked out, and it came out positive, and I paid it off. And so my credit score went from like 800 to 550 back up to 800 in a 6-8 month period.
Yeah.
And we got through it. And at the time, the market was really easy. And I've had some losing deals. And the more I talk to people, I've read stats online that it's about 12 to 15% of flips go sour or go negative in profits. So that's pretty significant. But then I have another buddy out of Georgia that flips 500 a year.
Wow.
So they constantly have 60, 70 going at a time.
Yeah.
And they do it all over the states. Incredible program. It's called Partner Driven. If you have anybody wants to look into it, it's a really cool program. Peter runs it. But I was talking to Peter, a buddy of mine. He said they probably lose money on 20 to 24%, depending on the year. That's a lot. So if you don't have the ability for it to be a 20% chance of loss. Okay, so here's one other thing. For your first flip, it's 40% likelihood that it's going to be a loser.
Oh, okay.
So I really want to be realistic and say, hey, if you don't have the financial ability to lose this money and still keep your marriage on the other end of it, or still be able to pay the bills on the other end of it, then you shouldn't do this yet. You need to save more. You need to wait a little longer and don't rush. And there's no such thing as quick, easy money. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. But if you can't lose it, then you're in the wrong business. There's risk. Inevitably, there's risk in investing, right? Even owning your primary residence, there's risk, realistically. Any investment has risk, so you can lose it. So I just want to be upfront and clear. And then if they're in a position where they're like, yeah, if I lost all this, I'm going to be totally okay. Then I'm like, okay, now let's talk. I used to say the minimum threshold was 50K. And now I feel in this market, I feel more comfortable with 70K. And if you're in the Denver market, I feel more comfortable if you have 80K liquidity on hand. Okay. So you don't have to have that. Like I went into it with a lot of risk. I had no money of my own into it. I just pulled out a loan, and you could do that. But can you personally handle that risk? Can your wife, is she okay with you taking on that risk? So it really is an important conversation to have. So that's number one. Can you handle the risk? What if you lose all this? And then luckily having a coach on your side, it cuts it down. It's not a 40% chance of failing on your first flip. Yeah. It's significantly lower. You've got somebody looking out for you. And if you're getting financing from a solid source, like Capital Fund One, for example, and I actually do some hard money loans now. Backflip is another good one. There's some great programs, but they will do their due diligence to make sure you're getting into a good deal. If it's not a good deal and they say, hey, I don't think this is a good deal, what I've seen a lot of investors do is they just shop around for another lender.
Yeah. And they'll just completely ignore them and be like, oh, yeah, they didn't know what they were talking about, but I do, as a rookie, know what I'm talking about.
I just think this is going to be a good one. What happens is we get emotionally attached, and then it skews the logic. What you really want to do is trust the experts. If your lender says it's not a good deal, then you probably need to walk away from it and wait another month till you find a really good deal, or a few weeks.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed with some of your coaching clients that they lose patience and they kind of just are like, I've put a month or two into it. I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to try something else. And they're going to jump over to a new strategy that they heard was hot and a quick way to make money.
Absolutely. I'd say flip a coin.
Yeah.
Something I talk a lot about with my people is having vision. If you don't have vision, I've been guilty of this too. If you don't have vision, you're like a ship at sea with no rudder, and you're just going to take every wave of opportunity that comes at you. And so in that case, and what you're describing right now, they get impatient, but what's happening is they're seeing a new wave of opportunity and they're taking that instead. And so they'll go chase the new shiny object. But that's a symptom. It's a symptom of a deeper issue, and it's them not having a compass or them not having a vision of where they're headed with their ship. Right? So what is it that you're really wanting to build long term? And you can't just say, I want to make $1 million, or I want to make a lot of money. Like, money is a means to something else. So where is it? Like, put some thought into it. What are you actually working towards? What's the impact you want to make? What are the kind of relationships you want to have in the process? Like, this is all really important stuff. And then what I really like to work on it with people is like, well, what's your value set? And what I don't mean is like, what are the good things that you think should guide your life? But instead, like, what are the deep things and your values that drive you? One of them for me is community, and another one is authenticity. Those are two of my values that if I have a venture opportunity come along now, first of all, does it align with my compass and my vision? Second of all, does it align with my vision? Am I going to be alone in it? Then it's probably not ideal for me, because one of my deep values is community, having a team around me. Is it something that's going to require me to perform or act like I've got my shit together more than I really do? Well, I'd rather just be vulnerable or authentic. Like, that's a deep value of mine. If it's something that goes against the grain with my values or with my vision, then I just walk away from it. Like, that's not a wave of opportunity that I want to take.
Yeah.
So that's something I really try to push my clients towards as well.
Something I tell a lot of people is to think about what their why is for why they want to get into real estate, what their purpose is for wanting to make money on this investment, because it has to be more long-term driven, and what your vision is because it's going to get tough, it's going to get hard, and you have to think back to why you got started and that reason you're holding on to wanting to see your long-term vision actually come into fruition. And a lot of people don't have a strong enough why, and when things get tough, they end up backing out, and they don't have that long-term vision, like you were saying with.
Yes. Yeah. And, just a tip, since we're talking about it, people talk a lot about why, right? Like, have a why. And we like to think, well, I want to make $1 million. So don't make it about money, right? Or I want to be making $1 million a year, or whatever that like abstract number is. Like, that's not going to get you there. Put more details about what the results you want to see from the $1 million. Or like, say, I've got another friend who says, I want to give away $1 million. I like that. That's actually a lot more valuable to me than saying I want to make $1 million. That is more motivating and more tangible. Or a lot of people say 10,000 a month. That's not really a why. That's like, I don't know, it's a wish list. But when you're looking for your why, what you really want to do is find a pain point, because a pain point is more motivating for you physiologically, and it'll give you more of the internal resources like dopamine to actually follow through, and it'll give you more grit when things do get hard to find a negative. So instead of saying, I want to make $1 million so my kids are taken care of, instead, I could think back of a time where I was a freshman in high school, and my dad just had his truck repoed, and he's such a good man, and now he's a millionaire. He came out of structural poverty, but at the time it was just a shit show. And he got his truck repoed, and we were getting our house taken away, and we're about to have to move, and we went 2 weeks without electricity.
Why?
And he's an entrepreneur. He had started a new business and put all of his money into it and just didn't get enough out of it at the time. He was like this close to foreclosure. He didn't foreclose. He ended up building it up and selling it for close to $2 million over the next decade, and really did good. And now since then, he's built up and sold multiple other companies. But it was just a really hard time. And we had 2 weeks without electricity in our house, where we just ate pork chops from the barbecue grill, for dinner in the evenings, and we had cereal. And that would be more motivating to say, hey, I want to make sure that I do what it takes so that my kids don't have to be in a house without electricity. And it sounds almost silly to say, but that's so much more of a potent why. And that's not my why, right? I'm just giving an example. That's so much more potent and stimulating physiologically than to have a positive one that says, I want to make $1 million. Or I want to make a lot of money to feed my family, and so my wife could shop for whatever she wants. Like, sorry if that sounded sexist. That was not my intent. My point is, spin it with the negative, and it's just a lot more effective of a why. And I think we should all have a why, whether or not it's real estate investing or even buying your own house. Well, why do you want to buy your own house to live in? there's a lot there that I'm sure you could find, and it's
Yeah.
motivating when shit hits fan.
Mm-hmm. For your men's group, are these a lot of younger guys that you kind of end up working with, and do a lot of these things kind of translate in terms of real estate investing? Yeah, have your why, your long-term vision in term to what you're kind of educating the men's group on.
Yeah, it's probably 50-50 overlap, and I'd say it's mostly like I don't really want to work with guys for the most part who aren't in their 30s yet. And the reason is, I have ADHD, and so I didn't have a fully formed prefrontal cortex till I was 30. And men in general don't have a fully formed brain till we're 25. And for women, it's like 23 or 22, something like that, right? Men are just a little bit more delayed.
Yeah.
We grow up slower. But, I hit some big walls in my 20s, and I didn't have the resources to within me to really do some deeper work and break through the deeper barriers. The barriers were still kind of forming. I was too unaware. And I've found that when I've worked with men in their 20s, a lot of times, I don't know how old you are, Tanner, so I hope this isn't at all like pigeonholing you. But they didn't have all the resources within them yet to do deep work and to really find deep breakthrough. So they can overcome obstacles a lot easier. They're a lot more flexible, and there's more neuroplasticity. They can learn new things and skills faster, but there's less room for breakthrough. So what I like to do is work with guys who are closer to their 40s and up. And usually that comes in the face of a divorce, or, maybe they were just caught with an affair, or maybe their dad just died and they're just processing that, and it's affecting their work. Like, okay, well, let's talk about the things that are getting you stuck. And I'm not a counselor, so I'm not going to be digging up stuff. But I would say, counselors would take you from where you've been to where you're at. But what I'm looking at is where you're at and where you're headed. Mm-hmm. And there is a healthy place for counseling. I still get counseling. I'm a big fan of it. For the last 8 years, it's kind of saved our marriage also in ways. But I like to help men who are kind of at a cracking point. They're like, man, I need help beyond me. I'm like, now we can talk, because they're ready to do the work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. For your coaching clients in the fix and flip program, are they older guys too? Just anyone that's trying to get in? Is it a lot of young people? What's the demographic of that?
Yeah, it's actually probably 2/3 men and 1/3 women. What I find is it's a lot of real estate agents who want to get into investing.
Okay.
Another place is, I've got one guy that I'm helping out who he's in ministry. He's like a worship leader at a church, and he's like, I can't take care of my family. Like, I can't bless my kids off of a worship pastor budget salary. Sadly, that's just the reality of, nonprofit work too. And I own a nonprofit that takes up a lot of my time as well. I'm on the board of a nonprofit as well, and I get it. I get the fact that there's limited resources there. But, he's like, I need to get into real estate investing so I can make some bigger changes, some bigger impacts to our savings.
Do you know a guy, this randomly came to my mind, his name's Jim something, but he also has a nonprofit here in town. He does real estate investing too. His nonprofit is out of the country though. Does that name sound familiar at all?
Well, I know a few gyms. I'm trying to place one that might own a nonprofit. It's not Jim Fennelson.
I can probably pull up his number real quick, and
that's
yeah. But you remind me a lot of him and what he's kind of talked to me about with Jim Ross.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds familiar. I feel like I should know him.
Yeah. Well, I can connect you if you like.
That'd be awesome. I'd appreciate that.
So let's see. I had a couple more questions about fix and flips. And is there like a certain timing for flips, whether it's market timing or timing throughout the year that someone should try to do, or is it more just the deal comes when the deal comes and you shouldn't try and time the market so much?
Yeah, look for a deal with good margin is more important than good timing. And margin matters more than ever right now because, some listings are sitting on the market 9 months, 10 months. Usually you can't drop the price a ton. So the longer it sits on the market, as you know, the more the price is going to go down. And the more the perceived value goes down, and the more the property can get stigmatized. So what you really want to do is price it under what your ARV is to sell it faster. You want to be very, very realistic with your ARVs right now. You want to make sure that you can manage holding costs for up to a year right now, where I used to say 6 months to 7 months. Right now, you should be able to handle holding costs for a full year, which a lot of times holding costs are you're paying 12% on your loan usually per year. And so usually it comes out to about, and it's interest only, it usually comes out to 1% of your loan per month is what you owe. So if that's a $500,000 house, there's a good chance you're making, almost a $5,000 payment per month on it. So can you do that for a full year and still have profit on the deal when it sells? That would be more of a luxury flip because a lot of people are buying them closer to 200, 250 right now for flips in Colorado Springs, and some even under 200. I'd recommend shooting closer to that mark. I used to be okay with doing 80 and 85% deals, but right now I would say shoot for 70 to 75% max. And you're familiar with that. It's like the 70% rule. I'm sure you've heard of.
I was going to ask you about if there are any rules that you like to follow when investing.
I used to hate the 70% rule because it limits how many deals you can find, and it limits volume. So the people I know who are doing between 30 and 70 flips per year in along the Front Range, they're usually okay with seeing $20,000 of profit margin on the end after holding costs and everything's been calculated, and that's closer to like an 85% to 90% rule. So for a while I stuck to that, but over the last 2 years, it is an investor's market. So you could find more deals right now than you could 2 or 3 years ago. And you could get better deals right now. There's a ton of them on the market. I could pull up 2 or 3 accounts right now and send you 10 decent deals in the area almost any given time. And they go pretty quickly. Yeah. But I would say you need a lot more margin right now. So 70 to 75% max. I wouldn't go over 75% right now. And that's including holding costs, because then you've got unexpected costs that'll come up. The other thing is, I used to be okay with just having one exit strategy, just flipping it. And now I think you should have 2 exit strategies. So if you can't sell it in time, do you have a way of refinancing it and holding it and being okay with either negative cash flow for a year or two, or break-even cash flow for a year or two? And then the other thing that would represent is opportunity cost. So you're not going to be able to deploy that capital into another resource for another few years. So if those are, that's part of your plan. So it's like a plan B. You've got to have a plan B right now. Again, this sounds so pessimistic, but I said I'm just a realist. And I have a buddy who flips 70 a year, and this is the way he thinks. So I'm sure you know Bryce Rasmussen.
Yes,
he's a good
I
buddy
do
of mine.
actually. Yeah,
he's so great. But yeah, he lives by the same principles. He's like, you have to have 2 exit strategies right now, and you have to have 75% margin, or 25% margin.
Huh. No, I do know Bryce. I actually, when I was first getting started, I did a bunch of open houses for him on all of his flips, because people would always want to come and see what it looked like. And so I was like, oh, good way to get people coming in, and maybe I can sell a property or something. And on Christmas Eve day, I was the only open house I was open, and someone walked in and said, I want to buy this house. And we locked the door and wrote the contract right up then and there. And they bought it.
I love that. And that was Bryce's listing. I love that.
It was Bryce's listing, yeah.
That's great, man. So are you with KW? Is that how you know him?
No, I am with Renjoy.
Tell me where you're at.
Renjoy Real Estate is where I'm at, and I just would go and look at nice listings that were on the MLS and Zillow and be like, hey, can I do an open house for you for free? And they'd be like, sure, yeah, go for it. And I eventually was just like, yeah, I'll just keep doing them for any new listing you get. Let me know, and
Yeah.
I'll do it. And
Great strategy.
yeah.
Great strategy. Have you heard of, have you ever tried doing an auction on a listing right now?
I have not, no.
Okay, so if you're looking for buyer's leads, it's the best possible way, like 100x what you're talking about right now. And so let's say you find a house that's worth 400 grand, and you talk to the owner and you tell the owner, hey, this house, let's put a minimum where it can't sell for less than 400 or 380, whatever you're comfortable with, but let's list it for 200. Let's list it for 180, at the way below what it's worth. And what that does, I have a friend who just did this a few weeks ago, and he ended up getting, I think he said in one weekend, they sold it at price at 400 something in Fountain. But in one weekend, he had, I think it was 140 people walk the property.
Oh my goodness.
and they got so many leads with people that don't even have agents.
Mm-hmm.
And
they just saw it and was like, it's a great deal. We want to buy it.
It's a great deal. And they're probably not qualified for a $400,000 house, but now you've got all these leads to work with and help them find a place. And then on top of that, you're going to help sell that property at, 400 or plus. I think he got 420 on his in Fountain.
Wow.
Through the auction approach. And then what happens is after the auction is over, then all they have to do is they have 24 hours to submit that person has a formal 24-hour period to submit an offer.
Okay.
At that price point.
Yeah.
So it's not even a binding auction.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's an amazing route right now. So also, if you have any flips that you're wanting to put on the market, you have a high chance of it just sitting on the market for 3 to 6 months right now. Mm-hmm. And that's painful because you're paying out $2, $3, $4 a month to hold it. So if you could do an auction method, you're going to get a ton of buyers that, or wholesalers. You may have investors come through that you could add to your list. There's a ton of value to it. And then you'll still sell it, but for a lot faster than you would, putting it on the regular market.
Yeah. So I have done that one time,
really?
But it wasn't my intention to do that, to get leads through it. It was just the intention because they wanted to sell it like now because they had another home that they wanted to buy.
Wow.
And they were like, just get us as high as you can. And I was like, well, this is going to be the best way to get as high as we can and, get it sold this weekend. And we did it. I did one day of it. I should have, done the whole weekend, but I did one day and I got probably like 25 people to come through. And I did get a lead that I helped buy a property too. So that worked out well. And we got it. I think we were at like 10,000 short of what they wanted. They wanted like 330. We got 320, and they were so fine with that. And it still worked out
right now,
great.
Take
they sold
any
it.
offer you get. Take
it worked
any
out
offer
great.
You get that's close.
Yeah.
Well,
and then they went and they bought their property they wanted. So yeah.
Yes. This goes for investors too. If you're trying to sell it for 400 and you're only going to make 20 grand at 400, but you have an offer come in at 390, take it. Do not wait. Because if you wait, it gets psychologically stigmatized. And it could sit there for 2 or 3 months and then just lower and lower. And then you're going to end up selling it for that much anyways, or less. And then you've been paying out holding costs the whole time. So I would say if you get it close, like just bite the bullet, take the loss. And that's okay. That's just part of the game right now.
What I notice is a lot of buyers will tell me, why has this property been sitting on the market so long? What's wrong with it?
That's what they ask.
I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just maybe someone hasn't been interested, or maybe they overpriced it. Like, that doesn't mean there's something necessarily wrong with the home itself. We have to do our own investigations and inspections to figure all of that out. But that is definitely true. If it's on the market for too long, people will start thinking there's a problem and not even want to look at it.
They won't even look at it. So then your showings will go way down. Yeah. And then offers will come in lower. Yeah, it's really like speed. Time is of the essence when it's on the market.
Hmm. Do you do any inspections when you're looking to purchase a property to flip, or do you do no inspection?
I like to do a strong offer, which usually includes like I'll walk through the property, and I may even walk through the property with a contractor, or if it has foundation issues, I'll walk through it with the whatever it's called. But I'll put it in my offer. I'll say that I'm not going to object to anything on the like that comes out of my visual inspections,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll call them safety inspections sometimes. But I'll say I'm not going to object to anything from the inspections with the exception of the roof. So if the roof needs to be replaced, and I'll put this in the offer, if the roof needs to be replaced, I'll ask that the seller pays for the makes the request with insurance and
Mm-hmm.
pays for it, and we will reimburse them at closing for the cost that they put into the roof. So, and the reason is the roof's going to cost me 12 grand to replace, but for him, it's going to cost him 2 grand, maybe 3 grand out of pocket, with his, maxing out his deductible.
Mm-hmm. I see. You kind of just play around the insurance game.
Yeah.
Right there.
And
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I will request in the inspection. What a lot of investors do is they will just get it under contract for any value, and then they'll do the inspection, and then they'll come back and hardball negotiate. And they'll say, hey, this all came up. We were expecting to spend 50K, and now we're going to have to spend 80K. So we want 30,000 more off the price tag. First of all, if you are going to do negotiations, ask for it in seller concessions to whatever extent your lender's willing to work with you
Mm-hmm.
on concessions. But and then as a last case scenario, drop the price in the negotiation. But I never do that because I like to be upfront and I like to put in a good offer from the beginning. If I'm expecting stuff to come up, I don't want to. I can negotiate like that, but I don't like to because I feel like it's taking advantage of people. I don't want to do that. That's what I mean. Like I'm just too tenderhearted sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I guess, I'm going to make 10K less on this than I expected, but it's okay. I planned for that when I did my numbers preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I would rather walk away from the deal than take advantage of people.
Mm-hmm. I see. Do you have any good stories from anything kind of crazy you found in a house or didn't expect to happen? And
I guess, I mean, the most fun thing is walking properties that need to be rehabbed because some of them are absolutely disgusting. Like you just want to go home and take a shower afterwards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I walked into one that this isn't the story I was going to tell, but I'm going there. I walked into one that, first of all, it had piles this high all throughout the house.
Mm-hmm.
And you walked in, and first of all, the smell, I'm not going to describe it. It was so bad. Every step you take, there were like mounds of rat poop that you were stepping on.
Oh my goodness.
The basement had flooded, and there was like 4 inches of sitting water that had been sitting there for months. And so inside this house was an entire ecosystem of rats thriving and multiplying, and then cats coming in and killing them off and eating them and living off them.
Oh my God.
It just like the cats were left behind with the house. So this whole ecosystem inside the house that was absolutely repulsive.
Oh my God.
But one of the things when I walked downstairs in that property, I didn't step into the water, but there's this big mound of trash, and looking right at me was a Chucky doll. It's just like one of the freakiest. I went home and just took a shower because it was so disgusting. And I would have taken it if they would have taken like 80 or 90 grand, but they wanted 200,000 on it. And it's one of those things where you have to redo all the drywall. You have to fully gut it, and not fixing plumbing stuff. Sure, that'll cost like 4,000 or 5,000, but drywall adds up so much.
Mm-hmm.
The other big surprise that comes up is if asbestos is found. Mitigating that is like 5, 10K, 10K usually. You've got the permitting process, and then you have to redo all the drywall. And doing all the drywall in the house is another $20K to the whole deal. So quickly you're spending 30 or 40,000 that you weren't expecting to spend on a regular flip. So I like to, if I'm suspecting that might be an issue, I like to do a little asbestos test, and I'd rather just walk away from that deal up front.
Okay.
I'm not super concerned about it, but I do want to fix the big issues. You don't want to just put lipstick on it.
Do you kind of focus on HVAC, water heater, foundation, roof? Those are the main ones for like the big hitters, and then do what you can for like kind of the cosmetic lipstick stuff.
Yeah. I like to do all the cosmetics, redo them. I don't like to cover up hardwood. Refinishing, you could refinish it by hiring 2 day laborers, for lack of a better word, or people that work hard. You could refinish hardwood floors at like $1 a square foot. Or you could pay for somebody to come in that does that professionally, and it'll cost $4 a square foot. Either way, it's not expensive. And if you're installing LVP, you're spending more than that. So I never like to cover up hardwood, especially if it's original. Just refinish it if possible. There's the occasional situation where the hardwood is too damaged from water. But almost always you could restore it really easily.
Is there any like item in the home that you think has the best ROI for rehabbing?
Well, always the kitchen and bathrooms. I've never spent $6,000 on a bathroom. Usually it's in the 5,000 range, and I budget 6. But I've never hit that on a bathroom, and that's a full gut rehab, moving toilets around. It's not expensive. Kitchens, I always budget about 12 grand, and if it's a big kitchen, maybe 15 grand. But like I told you earlier, I've never spent 15K on a kitchen, and that's full rehab. A to Z, new, always a garbage disposal. Never cut corners on a dishwasher. It's better to lose cabinets. It's better to have no cabinets than it is to have no dishwasher. Like, you've got to have a dishwasher. Because I've walked in with buyers to houses that didn't have dishwashers, and they just turned around.
Yeah, they're like, we're done.
Yeah, we're not even going to look at the rest of the house.
Yeah. Kitchen
and bathrooms, always remodel them. If you could add a bathroom, that adds significant value. And I guess another way to save money is I've got ADHD, so I go all over the place. Plumbers like to charge you $1 million if they have to get out a jackhammer. So what I've found is if there's something like some new plumbing that needs to be put in that requires jackhammer, I will personally go to Home Depot and rent one for $100 for 2 days. And I will get out there for 4 hours, and I'll jackhammer the floors and open it up as much as they need it. And then they've got no excuse. And all of a sudden it's like $1,000 job instead of a $4,000 job.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to do is replace all the plumbing. If you don't have, so some houses are gutted and you don't have drywall in them.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I will redo all the plumbing, because it only costs about $5 grand to redo all the plumbing in your house, and you could update the electric too.
Yeah.
Panels, I like to upgrade them if they're super old, or what's it called? Union Pacific?
Federal Pacific.
Federal Pacific. Thank you. I like to upgrade those, and you could get that done for $3,500. A lot of electricians will start out saying $4,500, and then you're like, well, my budget's $3,500, and they're like, okay, because it's 5 hours of work for them. You're not taking advantage of them, and I know a number of electricians who will get it done. I have one who did it for $2,800, and that was awesome. That was last year, so it's not even like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
People are willing to work with you if you're able to tell them your budget.
What do you think helps out best with negotiating with contractors? Should you always get multiple bids, or just start negotiating with the one right then and there?
With contractors, I like to give them a price sheet and say, hey, these are the prices I'm willing to work with. If you're willing to work with this, then I'll have you bid out one of my projects. So I'll show them my price sheet, and then they'll bid it out, and I'll be like, hey, you said the kitchen's going to cost you 25 grand, but here's my breakdown of using my price sheet. It shouldn't cost more than 12 or 13. And they'll be like, oh yeah, okay. And they'll adjust it. Okay. So that's really valuable when working with contractors. When you're working with subs though, subs can't think in terms of projects very well. Usually 99% of the time. They think in terms of hourly wage, because a lot of subcontractors, like if they do tile work, they can go work for a company and get paid $25 or $30 an hour. Or they might get a few retail jobs where they get paid thousands. And so they'll come in and I'll have a guy be like, yeah, I could do this backsplash for, $3 grand. And I'm like, well, I'm providing materials. The materials are right there on the ground. So how long, then I take it to an hourly rate for these guys. How long do you think it's going to take you, to do the backsplash? It should be 3 days of work. He's like, oh yeah, it's 3 days of work. I'll get it done real quick. I'm like, okay, so how many hours a day are you spending on that? And he's like, oh, 10 hours a day. I'm like, okay, so it's going to take you 30 hours, which it's not going to take him 30 hours of work. It's going to take you 30 hours and you want $3 grand on it. So you want me to pay you $100 an hour? And all of a sudden he's going to be like, well, yeah, I guess I could drop that. I'm like, honestly, I could hire some guys to come in here and do it for $20 an hour. I want to work with you. What if we just bring it down to $40 an hour for you? And he's like, yeah, I could do that. And he's thinking if he went and got a job with somebody else, he's going to be working for $25 an hour anyways. Yeah. So I'm not taking advantage of him, but I'm also not letting him take advantage of me. So now it's, instead of a $3,000 deal, I'm getting it done for $1,200.
And he's still happy because he's still making more than he would have anywhere else. And he was just kind of hoping you'd give it to him for $3,000. He's like, hell yeah, I'll take that.
And if it was retail, he could charge $3 grand, and that's fine. And he'd provide the materials for that $3 grand. But I'm kind of making up these numbers, right? Every negotiation's a little different. I've had guys come in and quote 10 grand on floors. I'm like, hey, this is our budget and this is why. And how long is it going to take you to do, 1,000 square foot of floors? And it's going to take you 2 days, and you wanting to get paid $10,000 for 2 days of work? He's like, you're right. Like, I could do 5. I'm like, thank you. That's the budget, and it's more than generous. Yeah. Making $2,500 a day, I think you'll be fine. Yeah. I'd never want to take advantage of people, but with subs, I break it down to hourly rate for them for negotiation.
Cool. Last couple of questions for you. I know we're hitting the top of the hour here.
Yep.
This is one, I didn't prep you for it, but I feel like you'll have a good one because you think on your feet pretty quick. Do you have a good quote or motivational advice that you really like that hits home to you that you think other people could benefit in business or just in life in general?
Yeah. 2 thoughts come to mind. So it's not really quotes, but 2 big, I think, mindset of things is you get paid based on the amount of risk that you're holding as an investor, and you get paid based on the size of the problem that you're solving. So with that in mind, you're providing a house for somebody. You're making it livable. Like in my case, I was able to buy a house that kind of helped save my marriage. That's pretty valuable. I really hope that guy walked away with a good paycheck. And the other thing is that we need to move to the place where we're willing to give more than we're asking for. We're willing to give more than we want to take. And I think that's what it takes to be successful in business. I think that's what it takes to be successful as an investor or in real estate. If you're constantly asking more than you're trying to give, then you're being a leech. You're being a problem. You're not solving problems. And you're living life from too selfish of a vantage point, where society can't thrive with those kind of viruses. So you're part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And what we're doing is we're providing solutions, problem-solving skills and skill sets. We're solving big problems for people. If you're moving into multifamily, you're all of a sudden providing housing for 100 people rather than 1. So you should be paid, 100x what you would expect. Yeah. Right? That's it's fitting. It's not ill-fitting. But as long as the approach is, I want to give more than I want to take, I think that's an essential mindset shift that a lot of us could use.
Yeah, that's a good why to have. Ideally, narrow it down to more of what you're looking for, but overall, in general, for anyone to start with, I think that's a good place to start.
Fundamental, I believe. So,
if anyone wants to, join your coaching course or wants to join your men's group, where can they find that out at?
Yeah, so firenights.net is my nonprofit, and the website's being revamped. But by the time you air this live, it'll be up and going again. So firenights.net is a place we get together every other week over campfires. There's about a dozen in Colorado, and they're in a few other states as well, in Texas and Georgia and not Alabama, Arkansas. And it's expanding. It's kind of a men's mental health movement where guys can just open up safely over a campfire, and like confidentiality is required. So it's just a safe place to just like be authentic and raw, and like you don't have to act like you have your shit together. So I think we need that. Feel free to go visit firenights.net for that. And if you're interested in coaching, whether it's breakthrough coaching or real estate investing coaching, you could email me personally. So my email address is Burke, Burke. So my name is kind of like Birkenstocks if you're trying to remember, but Burke at menfullyalive.com.
Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Burke. That was awesome.